In the vastness of space, amidst the countless stars and nebulae that dot the cosmic canvas, lies a truth that many spacefaring civilizations have come to accept: the universe is filled with wonders and terrors in equal measure. Among these civilizations exists an interplanetary governance known as the galactic bureaucracy, a collection of species that have achieved spaceflight and banded together for mutual benefit and protection. I, Xanthor of the Gelic Confederation, serve as one of the many diplomats within this grand alliance, and it is through my eyes that I shall recount the most remarkable tale of first contact that has ever graced our records. It began, as many significant events do, with a mistake. A colossal oversight that would forever alter the balance of power within our galaxy. The discovery of humanity was not the result of careful observation or planned exploration, but rather an embarrassing administrative error of galactic proportions. When we first made contact with humanity, we were genuinely surprised. After all, it's not every day that an interplanetary government screws up so badly that they manage to miss an entire new sentient species within their own territory. This underdeveloped region may have been an insignificant backwater by our standards, but considering the sheer volume of radio signals the humans had been carelessly broadcasting into the void, our leadership had absolutely no excuse for their oversight. The questions surrounding this monumental failure would need to wait, as the humans certainly wouldn't. They had already deciphered elements of our language, an impressive feat in itself, and were attempting to establish communication with one of our colony worlds which they had apparently been observing for approximately one of their years. Thankfully, the galactic bureaucracy maintained protocols for such scenarios, typically reserved for primitive species that had finally discovered faster-than-light travel. Following these guidelines, a spherical region with a radius of 100 light-years around their homeworld was designated as their territory. Unfortunately for us, approximately 30% of this newly allocated space encroached upon Karkan territory, but I shall elaborate on that particular complication later. When our diplomatic envoys finally established formal contact with this emerging species, their physical appearance and behavioral patterns astonished us even further. You see, Earth resided at the absolute upper limit of the gravitational spectrum that our theoretical models had predicted for planets capable of producing spacefaring civilizations. In fact, if their planetary gravity had been even marginally higher, their initial spaceflight attempts would have been physically impossible to achieve orbit, likely leading them to abandon such endeavors as we had witnessed with several other species throughout our history. The only alternative would have been upliftment by another spacefaring race, but such interventions were exceedingly rare, as few civilizations were willing to shoulder the immense responsibility of shepherding a high-gravity species into the galactic community. Allow me to provide additional context for those who have not had the privilege of encountering a human in person. Most sapient species that evolve on high-gravity worlds tend to be approximately half the size of humans at their largest, typically relying on their intelligence and numerical advantage to overcome challenges collectively and compete against larger predatory species. However, this is not to suggest that humans themselves are particularly large creatures. Quite the contrary, their average height, roughly 2 of their meters, is slightly less than half the galactic median height. Consequently, humans possess remarkable physical strength compared to other high-gravity sapiens, and truly monstrous strength when measured against the average galactic species. Furthermore, humans move with a peculiar lack of grace, having adapted to their crushing gravity over countless generations. Their movements appear quick and efficient, almost mechanical in comparison to the fluid motion displayed by other races. This characteristic rapidly earned them a reputation as clumsy powerhouses throughout the bureaucracy. Their seemingly boundless optimism and unflappability in most circumstances only reinforced this stereotype. I say most circumstances because humans displayed a curious vulnerability when discussing their history. It was rather endearing, if I'm being completely honest, watching human diplomats blush and squirm as they recounted what was, by galactic standards, a boringly common history of warfare and societal conflict. They were so deeply ashamed of their past that several of our diplomats couldn't help but laugh as they explained to the increasingly relieved humans that they weren't considered monsters merely for engaging in a few wars among their own people. Another factor contributing to their developing reputation was humanity's tendency to solve problems through brute force. Human engineers regularly employed what they termed percussive maintenance techniques when working on ships and stations. To quote one particularly apt saying, "The only surprising thing about a human smashing a piece of delicate machinery to fix it is that it actually starts to work once they are done." The more we discovered about humans, the more amusing they appeared to be. They quickly became the subject of numerous jokes among bureaucracy members. When the humans inevitably discovered this fact, our government braced itself for severe diplomatic repercussions. Part of the reason so many jokes circulated about humans was that, despite our amusement, many species harbored a lingering fear of these unnaturally strong primates. But the humans? To borrow one of their own expressions, the humans didn't give a fuck. They simply laughed off the jokes and even shared several self-deprecating ones of their own creation. While this reaction helped alleviate many concerns that bureaucracy species had regarding humans, it also inspired several new jokes, offered in good faith, I assure you. One particularly popular jest suggested that if any species attempted to invade human territory, the humans would surrender their homeworld without resistance. For the subsequent few years, humans contentedly expanded within their designated buffer zone, establishing mining operations, colonies, and trade agreements with remarkable efficiency. It became apparent that humans were naturally suited for labor-intensive work. With galactic average intelligence, which, to give humans proper credit, was certainly nothing to dismiss, combined with their extraordinary strength and seemingly inexhaustible energy reserves, they could produce resources and consumer goods at rates unprecedented in our records. The economic future for humanity appeared increasingly promising, particularly due to the exceptional quality of their manufactured goods. Unfortunately, their most lucrative trade agreement would soon collapse under the weight of cultural misunderstanding. During their initial foray into interspecies commerce, humans secured an exceptionally profitable trade deal with the Sarkake stellar gospel, a deeply religious avian species that had been attempting to peacefully convert their galactic neighbors to their faith, albeit with minimal success. This agreement formed the backbone of the human economy, providing them with the essential resources required to begin production on a scale previously unimaginable in human commercial history. This makes the subsequent incident all the more unfortunate. A human leader was inadvertently recorded by a peripheral system tabloid publication referring to the Sarkake as the Jehovah's Witnesses of the Galaxy, expressing mild annoyance with their persistent evangelism despite acknowledging their excellence as trading partners. The article eventually reached the Sarkake High Speaker who, outraged by these comments, immediately declared that all Sarkake commerce with such a godless and ungrateful species would cease forthwith. She promptly contacted her diplomatic representatives within the bureaucracy and instructed them to propose a formal trade embargo. When this embargo was presented for other species to sign if they wished to join in, economically isolating humanity, we anticipated an explosive reaction from the humans, as this development would undoubtedly plunge their economy into a prolonged recession. But once again, in keeping with their established pattern, the humans didn't give a fuck. To be fair, humans were significantly impacted by this development, they simply appeared remarkably unconcerned. They even issued formal apologies for the inappropriate remarks made by their leader that had so offended the SARKK. Their economy had indeed been dependent on that trade agreement, and it would require approximately 2 decades to fully recover, even though only one other species signed the embargo. This additional signatory was the perpetually isolationist fuck off. You Xeno scum don't deserve to know the name of our species or its glorious empire. Yes, that is precisely how they are identified in our database. Yes, they insist that we recite the entire absurd designation before they will acknowledge our presence. No, we remain uncertain why they continue attending bureaucracy gatherings at all. Of course, they had already established embargoes against every other civilization, so this likely represented a convenient opportunity to extend their policy to the newcomers. Humanity's difficulties with the broader galactic community did not end there, as they were completing the final stages of economic reconstruction.